What you're talking about, it sounds like, is finding ways to recharge and focus on yourself.
For sure. Oh yeah. So my passion for the things that I'm passionate about in my personal life are what will allow me to have the passion for my professional life.
Welcome to the Walk On podcast. This is a journey to find one's passion and leading from that place of purpose. And we'll get there through conversations with people living aligned and fulfilling existences. A bit of background first. Walk On. Why Walk On? Well, it comes from the song You'll Never Walk Alone, which is a personal favorite of mine. And I learned not too long ago it was actually my grandfather's favorite song. So it's interesting that it resonates with me as well. But some of the lyrics that stand out and why we named it Walk On is hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden light and the sweet silver sound of the lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain. Though your dreams be tossed and blown, walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. To me, it's really a song about perseverance, doing the work, believing in a brighter future, and finding purpose and community as a result. So this podcast is about following my journey for purpose. We'll interview artists, executives, community leaders, and others to share their lessons from their path and successes. You know, where did I get started on a podcast? I didn't really think I'd be doing a podcast. Maybe I did, but didn't really anticipate starting one now. But, you know, I've accomplished some things I'm really proud of in my career, but I've sort of hit a rut professionally over the last year. I love my clients, but like, you know, myself, many others are looking for that role, that responsibility, that purpose that propels them out of bed every day forward into rewarding work that makes you feel valued and valuable. And it allows you to lead an authentic life in meaningful ways. So that's what we're doing. That's what the podcast is about. Hopefully I'll learn along the way. You'll learn a little bit along the way. And that's enough of me. Let's start with our first guest. This is our demo podcast. And I couldn't think of a better person to join us than James Mills. You'll probably hear me revert back between Jamie and James. Mills sounds familiar because he's my brother. I know him as Jamie, professionally goes by James. So you'll hear me revert back and forth. But, you know, I was thinking of who I wanted to be my first couple of guests as I get my sea legs on a podcast. And Jamie came to mind because when I think of someone who throughout their career has been dialed in, he's been a salesman. He's going to tell you about his bio in a second. But, you know, I used to joke he could sell a bridge to people without water. And it's because he would just authentically go into details about why his product was valuable, how it could help the people that his customers were serving. And it just felt authentic. And so as we're talking about authentic passions, Jamie came to mind. So Jamie, welcome. And why don't you tell a little bit about yourself to our audience?
Yes. So obviously you started off, I'm your brother. So I am currently a real estate agent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. It's interesting. I never thought I'd be a real estate agent, but it's a true passion of mine. I love helping people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives. And I've come to the point where I'm kind of become a coastal concierge because I live in Florida. And so what I love to do is it's a way for me to put my vocation with my avocation. So basically I love food. I love the beach. I love restaurants. I'm able to help my buyers, and especially those that are from out of town, find the places that they want to hang out here. So it's become a real passion of mine, both work and in my personal life.
Awesome. As a PR guy, I love alliteration. So coastal concierge. Say more about that. Where did that come from? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, no. So I'm doing this whole rebranding with my social media. And I was talking a conversation with you, a conversation with my broker, a conversation with some of the people in my office. And I have a buyer who's from out of town. And he texted me on a Thursday and said, "Hey, I'm in St. Pete. Where do I go?" And I said, "Give me 5 minutes." And I put together basically a bar crawl for him. That's what he wanted to do. And I'm like, have an appetizer here, have a drink here, don't eat here, go have lunch here, and worked it through. But I've given him dry cleaners. I've given him places to go. I've given beach stuff. So I really love where I live. So it's kind of like I'm your full service guy, whether it's just helping you find a house or sell a house. It's helping you find a handyman, helping you find, the right beach to go to, helping you find the right restaurant to go to on a Saturday night. That's kind of where it comes from. So it's full service. Your concierge.
That sounds like a real big differentiator, right? It's not just I'm good at paperwork and maybe good at finding new houses. I can actually help you lead a better life when you move.
That's my goal. That's my total goal, because this lifestyle is a little different moving here from Atlanta. Never thought I'd be in Florida, but honestly, I love it. And it's an adjustment. So you have to get adjusted to, the pace of life and all of that. And so one of the things I love to do is help guide my buyers through that.
That's awesome. So I want to get into passion a little bit. Clearly, you're animated, you're passionate about this work, and that's really exciting. And one of the things I want to do is I'm someone who's thinking through the next phase of my life and my career. Right, transition is that's the reality, right? Bob Dylan said, "If you're not growing, you're dying." So we're changing or dying. I don't want to bastardize the poet laureate, but that's the concept. So we'll get to that in a second. But let's start with those passions. So personally, what are you passionate about?
I'm passionate about a couple things. Music, for one, as you know. I'm a huge music fan. Excited about Record Store Day tomorrow. Can't wait. There's a bunch of stuff on my list, but I'm going to behave. I'm passionate about food. I'm passionate about the beach. I'm passionate about my bourbon collection. So I've got a little bit of a high taste level. So I need to be able to turn my passion for the things that I love into my passion for my work.
I love it. Yeah. So I'm curious. So obviously I'm a bit of a music fan as well, right? And, owned a small record label, and our intro music, by the way, and our outro music is by an artist named Gary Pfaff. He was on our small label. It's really why we started it. But I love music. I go to as many concerts as possible. Where did and potentially you might be able to answer for me, where did our love of music come from?
Honestly, it's from a bunch of places, right? And I actually had a conversation with our cousin the other day about this. Um, Sinatra, Tony Bennett, Dean Martin, Ray Charles, that all came from Grandma and Grandpa. We'd go to Grandma and Grandpa's house, they'd play music. And then, Dad loved the Beatles, Dad loved Peter, Paul, and Mary, Mom loved Motown. When we would come back from the lake on the weekends, you and Dad would be in the back asleep, and Mom and I would be up front listening to golden oldies. And so I think they instilled that. But then, my Aunt Pat, our aunt, she brought me Rod Stewart and Fleetwood Mac and Earth, Wind, and Fire and Kool and the Gang and those kind of things. So throughout my life, I've had a bunch of different musical influences who've turned me on to music that is, definitely different from other people's.
And sang a bit growing up, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, say more about that.
No, I was heavily involved with the choir. I have several New York State choral awards. It's definitely a passion of mine. After a bourbon or two, I might be known to rock Mac the Knife to this day.
I've never seen that.
Never at all, not once, right? So
you were also the lead in some musicals, right?
Yep, I was the lead in Guys and Dolls, and oh my God, what's the other one? Losing my mind.
Once Upon a Mattress.
No, Once Upon a Mattress, I wasn't a lead, but
okay.
Yeah, The Pajama Game.
That's it. Yeah. Well, we won't make you sing Mac the Knife yet. I don't know. Maybe you do have bourbon there, but yeah. So let's pivot for a second, and then I want to marry the two, because you started out talking about that with the Coastal Concierge. But talk to me about your professional passion.
So honestly, sales has been a passion. I was pre-vet and I didn't get into vet school, and I had this science degree that I didn't know what the heck I was going to do with, right? And I started looking into pharmaceuticals, and I was like, this is a good marriage. I can use my science and I can help people, and I can, like you said, I can sell a bridge to people that don't have water. So it was an opportunity for me to have my passion for sales marry with what I learned in college and actually be able to use my degree.
Yeah, that's great. And so what does that feel like? Walk me through, I'm amazed at, right? I've had to sell, whether it was running for office and selling myself to raise some money and get voters to vote for me. But I really, from professionally find it challenging to go convince somebody to buy my services. Walk me through that process. What is that like? And where does that passion kick in? Does it feel like a job when you're in the heat of it, or are there pieces that feel like a job? And maybe think historically from the pharmaceutical side to what you're doing now.
So on the pharma side, the job component, the stuff that felt like a job was all of the training and all of the stuff that wasn't customer facing, right? Paperwork. I hate doing paperwork. It's not my favorite thing. That part felt like a job. But when I was in front of customers and I was genuinely advocating for patients and trying to help patients' lives and help physicians understand how my products could do that, that was my passion. And it's not just physicians. You're talking to nurses, you're talking to PAs, you're talking to MAs, you're talking to everyone in the office, because you want to get them invested in that as well. You also build a relationship with them, right? Because people want to buy things from people that they like. And as you know, neither one of us has ever met a stranger. So it's basically just going out and making friends with new people.
And what is that like now in your new role doing real estate?
Yeah, it's basically the same thing. I went to a pool party last week for one of my friend's birthdays, and there were a bunch of people there that I had never met. And I met two couples that live in Asheville currently that are thinking about moving here, one part time and one full time. And so it was just through having a conversation with them, getting to know them, and learning what they were looking for, and then that potentially could lead to some business down the road.
And you've obviously been successful at various roles in your career. How does that passion play a role in that success?
The passion plays a role in success for me in a couple ways, right? So the first, when it was in pharmaceuticals, I want to help people, help patients improve their lives. Where I'm in real estate now, I want to help people find their dream of Florida, right? Their piece of the sunshine. And so I'm also very competitive, and I do like the finer things in life. So I want to make as much money as I possibly can. And I know it's sometimes maybe evil to say that, but it's true. I want to make as much money as I can. So, and I also want my name on the leaderboard because due to my competitive nature. So, I'm competing against myself, but I'm also competing against the other 1,000 agents in my network. And that's kind of what fuels me. We had our awards banquet recently, and I wasn't invited to the stage. So that's my goal for next year.
Got it. Good. Um, Talk to me a little bit about when you realized that there was this, right, you didn't go into pharmaceutical sales. I know you said it was a way to marry your knowledge with a career, but when did you know that clicked? Like, what was that like when you said, gosh, I'm not just good at this, I'm passionate about it?
So my first 3 months were a little bit of a train wreck. I was in Richmond, Virginia, and the New Yorker in me still hadn't left. So I was a little bit of a bull in the china shop. But honestly, about 3 months in, I had a nurse come up to me and say, "You really have impacted Dr. Walker." And I said, "Okay, help me understand that." And she said, "He looks at how he treats his patients in a whole new way now, and you have helped him become a better doctor." And it was through having conversation with him, presenting clinical studies, discussing, patient outcomes and those type of things. And before he would just grab what was cheapest. And now he really dug in. Not that he was a bad doctor, but doctors have to treat 20 different disease, well, more than that, 20 more than 20 different disease types that they'd see on a regular basis. So I was only with one. So I was an expert on that. And I was able to help him and educate him. And then about 2 weeks later, Dr. Walker came out and hugged me and thanked me and said, "I really appreciate all that you do for my patients and my staff." And that's when it
That,
clicked.
that Yeah, that's powerful. I think that speaks to finding value. And I said in the intro, I say in the intro to our podcast, finding value and being valuable. I think it speaks to being of service to others. And I sometimes find that difficult, right? I mean, I'm in a service industry. I'm a public relations professional, and that's my job, is to empower people to be at their best, to put words in place, to put systems in place, to execute against events or plans, and make sure they're optimized. But it's sometimes hard to be like, it's you can go through the motions, right? You can be like, well, I checked the box, but to have that feeling of value, like, wow, that work wasn't just doing these things, there was an outcome, there was a value, I made a difference.
Sure. Well, and towards the end of my pharmaceutical career, I became a manager. And one of the things that I loved the most was to see my people succeed. And so while I still had interactions with physicians, that was their job day to day, right? So my job was to grow them and help them become better representatives. And there was nothing that gave me more pleasure or more passion than when my reps won awards, when my reps made President's Club, when they had the highest commission structure in the company. That's what motivated me at that point. So I always try and pick something that's going to help me stay focused and help me, keep me on the rails so that I don't get distracted and just go through the motions, like you said.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, and maybe your love of, and I have it too, but maybe your love of empowering and coaching other people comes from our dad, who was a teacher and a coach, and those lessons of trying to empower people, to giving them the tools and the support to be the best they can be.
For sure.
So we talked a little bit at the beginning about, you've had a career transition, and that's really, what this is about, right? I'm not closing my PR firm tomorrow, but I'm sort of finding, how do I reinvigorate the work that I'm doing? So you went through a transition and a change professionally. from pharmaceuticals to real estate sales being the core ingredient there. What brought the change?
There were several factors. So COVID changed how pharmaceuticals work, and I was managing a district that was basically the southeast, so I had to travel every week. That was honestly probably one of the biggest impetuses for change. Is I would either fly out Sunday or first thing Monday morning and not get home until Thursday every week. So I was never
Yeah.
home, never got to enjoy my bed, never got to enjoy the beach. That was the difficult part. The other thing was I would fly to Atlanta and I would be there for a week, and that was my old territory. Doctors that I had known when I was a pharmaceutical rep, I saw between 15 and 20 doctors a day. There were weeks that I was in Atlanta that we saw 10 doctors. That was it for an entire week. So the industry had changed, and I had always had a passion for real estate. We moved here. Our real estate agent was not the best, and we pulled all the comps, we set the pricing, we did everything. We pulled the listings, like this is what I want to go see. And so I'd always had a passion for that, and I felt that we were given such a disservice that I didn't want anyone to go through it again. And I love going to look at houses, so it was an opportunity for me to pivot and take my passion for that and then put it into a job, a career.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to go a little deeper here. How do you make that transition, right? So, you're going through. I call it the, for I don't know that there will be a lot of kids watching, but as an entrepreneur, I call it the grab your junk and jump in the river moment, right? And we've talked about that, right? How do you decide? Like, I have these options. Some are choices, some are foisted upon me, and you know what? I just got to go. How do you make that change? What goes through your head? What are the things you're thinking about?
Yeah, it was difficult. As you know, I tend to be fairly risk averse, and I probably overstayed my time in pharma just because I was risk averse. And I was just given an opportunity. I had a great partner at the time who encouraged me, and I had friends that encouraged me. And I finally just said, look, if it's do or die, it's now or never, right? I've always wanted to own my own business. And so this was an opportunity for me to continue my love of sales and passion and help people in a different way, but also at the same point, take a new journey and be an entrepreneur, right? Something I hadn't done. I've always worked for someone else. Now I work for me.
Yeah, that's and talk a little bit about, what are some of those, you're learning a new industry, so I suspect it's hard to just all of a sudden be like, wow, I'm really passionate about this. I've got to study for an exam. I've got to learn paperwork, which we said, you don't like paperwork. Not many of us do, but how do you weather that storm of, man, did I do the right thing? Am I ever going to get the ropes of this industry?
Sure.
How do you keep that perspective? How do you make that transition?
So I'll be honest, the first 6 months was difficult. Out of the gates, I had a deal the first week I was an agent. Friends were moving here. It was a nice sized deal. It was great. It was like selling Sunset or something, right? I'm picking up the phone. I'm calling the other agent. That's not going to work. Here's what we're going to offer. Like negotiating in deep. And she was like, "How long have you been an agent?" I was like, "This is my first deal." And she was like, "Do you want to come work for us?" It was so funny. But so that was great. And then I hit the doldrums, right? And so
Yeah.
I'm like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing what I need to do? And so I did the things that we're supposed to do, prospecting. I got several different accreditations for my industry as well. And so I used that downtime to better myself within the industry. The other thing I did was I was like, I need to go bang out open houses. So I would do open houses for people that didn't want to do them on the weekends with their listings. And I picked up a couple buyers that way. And I just knew that I had to stick it out, and I knew it was going to take 18 months or more before it was a sustainable business. But I'm glad I weathered the storm because things are really starting to break for me, and it's looking good. And the other thing is, I a long time ago I read The Tao of Pooh, and it transformed my life. And recently, going through a separation and a divorce, I went back to it, and it really is interesting. It kind of helped me and grounded me and centered me. And kind of one of the things that I really get out of it is the only thing that I can control is my reaction to the chaos that's around me. That's it. That's all I can control. I can't control anything else in the universe. The only thing I can control is how I react to it. And so that's kind of how I centered myself and kept myself just plugging along. Plus, I need to buy toys for my dog, so I need to have some money.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there, and that's great. And that's the point of this podcast, right? Covey has a similar theory, and it's the circle, and there's all these things coming at you, and it's just the things in the circle are those that you can control, and you can influence those other things by your decisions, by your actions, but you can't control them, and it's how you react to those that is the answer. And I've fully lived that way, and it's easier said that I've tried to live that way, and it's easier said than done. It's a perfect time though to bring in someone I do a lot of reading. He's got a podcast. He's got multiple podcasts, but his name's Scott Galloway. He's got a podcast called Prof G. One of the books behind me, The Arithmetic of Happiness. He's one of these guys, sort of a Renaissance guy. He's was in the tech industry, sold a company, did some marketing, taught at NYU. And so he can talk about everything. The Prof G, there's a lot of economics in it. He talks current events, politics. But one of the things in it sort of it hit right at my podcast. His most recent thing, he's got a new book coming out, but he says, follow your talent and not your passion. And my
Interesting.
podcast is about following your passion, right? That's the point of it. And I think what he's articulating is, you know, the people that tell you follow your passion are multimillionaires who've had their success and they can now go dabble in rockets, or
Right.
they can, right? How many people are billionaires and now they want to fly in space? Richard Branson, all those guys, right?
Bezos.
So they're following their passion. But he's saying follow your talent, put in the 10,000 hours, which I subscribe to the 10,000 hour theory, which I suspect you know what that is, right? That's the,
Yep.
put in 10,000 hours of it and you become a master of it. Michael Jordan, Bill Gates, they all put in that 10,000 hours, Mia Hamm, whatever
Gretzky.
it was.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And so I buy into the underlying principle, but I think, and I want your perspective on this, if you aren't passionate about it, I don't think you can be the best version of yourself. You can put in the 10,000 hours. You can grind. You can be a grinder. I mean, I think as there are, I'm an example. I played a college sport and I was short for my sport and I wasn't the most gifted person in the world, but I maximized where I got because I had a bigger heart than anyone and I was willing to work harder than anyone. So talk to me about that. That was a long bit I threw at you there, but talk to me about that. What wins out? Is it passion? Is it your following the things you're good at? What is that equation for you?
Honestly, I think it's a combination of the two, right? So, if I follow what I'm good at, it's sales. Obviously, I have a
Mm-hmm.
pretty impressive track record, but I think you need to be passionate about what you're selling, if that makes sense. There was a period where I had an opportunity to work at 1099 for a medical marijuana company, and for some reason, I just couldn't get passionate about it, and the results showed. And I left. I couldn't do something I wasn't super passionate about. I think it's very commendable, and I think it's very noble, but it just wasn't. It wasn't something that made me get up
Yep.
every day and say I want to do this. Right?
Yep.
Pharmaceuticals did. Were there times when I had products that weren't maybe the best in class or weren't going to be world changers? Of course. But when I did really well, it was the drugs that I believed in and those things that I truly, truly thought would help people. And that's kind of what led me to real estate, because everyone needs someplace to live, right? And so being able to find people the place that's their dream really gets me up every morning, gets me excited.
Yeah, and I buy a lot of that, the arithmetic in that equation that you've put in there. For me, you said it earlier, right? It has to provide some sort of value. I have to be of service. Like, just and I've had jobs where I'm really good at it and I work my tail off because that's just all I know, but it's for a company or a product or something that I'm like, it's not changing the world, or in fact might be harming the world, and it's hard to me to sustain that. So it is for me. Yes, you have to be good at it. Yes, you have to put in the hard work and be dogged about it. But if you're not passionate about it, and for me, you're not passion is part of having derived value or giving value. I just don't know that, to me, that is, as you said, getting you up in the morning or really what we're doing. So Scott Galloway, I think, is super smart, and but I tend to think that you have to have a bit of both. You got to be passionate. The other thing is, are you willing to put in the hard work
Right?
if you're not passionate about it? Right.
Right.
That's nose to the grindstone type stuff that, if you can avoid it, I think you should. All right. So, we talked about leadership a little bit, and that's the other piece of this equation. You mentioned coaching and mentoring and empowering your sales team, what does leadership look like to you? What are those core ingredients of leadership? And I want to have you also at some point think about it in the how it manifests itself between leadership in an industry where you're on a team, now in an industry where sure you're on a team, but you're ultimately, selling for yourself.
So, a couple things. So, I've been very lucky to have some very good leaders. I've been had the misfortune of having bad leaders.
Into the world of workforce.
Right? Exactly. So, I think the first thing is there has to be open communication, right? As a leader, you have to be able to communicate with whether it's a leader on a team or it's a leader as a title where you're someone's boss. You have to have open communication, and you have to be able to be honest and open with each other. And when that's not there, the relationship is going to be fragmented, and you're not going to be able to accomplish anything. The other thing is, when I was a manager, when I was a leader, I always wanted those that wanted it, I trained them for my job, right? So rather than keeping things in silos and keeping all the information to myself, I gave it to them freely. And I gave them additional responsibilities. I let them do at the meetings, I let them present, I let them pick a topic and present of their choice. I let them do selling skills, especially those that they were good at. If they're really good at asking questions, I would have them run a workshop on probing. So I think being able to not control everything yourself and not control all the information, that's a true sign of leadership. And then the other thing, the final thing is I had a boss who said, the reason I'm a great leader is because I give you just enough rope to hang yourself. Right.
Wow. Okay.
So you give them enough leeway to do things, but you're there to catch them if it's not working. Right. So rather than dictating exactly what they do and sending them out with a script or trying to make a mini me, which you can't. Right. So whether you subscribe to Bolt or Disc or Briggs Meyer, yep, there are different personality types. Right. And so I can't take 12 people and make 12 me's. So what I need to do as a leader is make better them. Right. And so whether that's sales coaching, whether it's scientific coaching, whatever it is, that's important. For me, leadership on a team, I actually was given the honor yesterday to present a workshop in front of our whole brokerage on basically how to, the four important things that you need to do across communication and why it's important, and talk about different ways of learning, visual learners. And my broker gave me the opportunity to do that. And it was amazing. It was great. And I'm just an agent like everyone else in the office, but other people look to me as a leader because I'm willing to share my success and I'm willing to share what works. And I'm always looking to try and better them in addition to better me. Because if they sell more houses, we get a bigger brokerage. I get a better desk, things like that. So
Yeah. And you mentioned selling Sunset. There are all sorts of different perks that come in their office, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. So thank you for that. As a communications person, I appreciate that you're a professional communicator. I appreciate that that's what they tasked you to talk about was communication. So well done. Yeah. I think that's the key, right? It's you'd love for people to mimic the things that you're a leader for, the things you're good at. But I think that's egotistical and not realistic, as you said. And it's our job to empower the people to be the best version of themselves. When I was coaching high school hockey or, in a workplace and had a team, I always sort of gravitated, but also was given the sort of problem player,
right.
the kid that nobody could just get through. And for me, it was, I want to find out why you're playing. Why are you passionate? Why are you in this industry? What is it that motivates you? And let's dig into that. And now let that fill the, wrap your skills that I want you to have around that. Get that purpose out. Again, it's purpose. And that comes with listening. That comes with showing that you're invested in them. I think that's the best type of leaders. They invest in their people authentically, and they spend the time and treasure and resources to do that. So it sounds like you're doing that same as well. We're running up against time here, and I want to ask a couple other quick things.
Sure.
Be as thorough as you want here, but how do you stoke those passions, whether it's professional or personal or both, whatever you want to cover? How do you keep that flame going?
Personal, it's easy, right? So tomorrow's record store day. So I printed off this 9-page list of all the albums that are going to be available. And I went through and starred like 15 of them that I potentially might like to find. So I'm always on the hunt for that. As you know, we both had, and our parents had a pretty significant record collection that a lot of it got ruined in my dad and our dad's basement. So I'm trying to find the replacements for that. So that kind of stokes my passion, right? So it's something I love to do on Saturday and Sundays, just walk into a record store, an antique store, and pick something up.
Let me pause you right there if I can. So that's a tactical manifestation or an outward manifestation. What you're talking about, it sounds like, is finding ways to recharge and focus on yourself.
For sure. Oh yeah. So my passion for the things that I'm passionate about in my personal life are what will allow me to have the passion for my professional life. Because if you don't recharge, and there was a period last year where I'd worked like 21 days in a row, and I took the entire 4th of July weekend off and just went and bought a new cookbook, and I cooked like 10 things in the cookbook. I spent 3 days at the beach. I needed that, and I came back a better person for that. So yes, you need to use your the things that you're passionate about personally to recharge you professionally, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and honestly, the sponsors, they're not on the screen here. The bevy of sponsors we have for this new podcast. I'm not doing it for the $1 million contract, on Spotify. It's because I enjoy talking to people. And, something you said before, I neglected to sort of put some words to. In the PR world, when you were talking to your peers and you were coaching and teaching your peers, that's thought leadership. That's the term we use in
Yep.
PR, is demonstrating. And everybody's, by the way, everybody's an expert. I used to run, as you know, public affairs across the Southeast for Walmart, and I would work with store managers, and I would try to get them ready to go talk to reporters or talk to elected officials. And they're like, that's not me. Some didn't go to college. Some have a high school diploma. And they're like, that's not me. And I'm like, wait a minute. Do you run a business that's tens of millions of dollars? Do you have 400 employees? Do you deal with HR issues? Do you deal with customers? Well, you're an expert.
Right.
Lean into that. We can all learn from each other. So I really appreciated you saying that. But yeah, that's why I dove into this podcast. I'm like, if I'm reading all these books, I actually want to have and nobody wants to talk to me about this stuff on over a beer. Like, just stop. So I had to create a podcast to have people come on and talk to me and share their views so I can learn from them. But that's it, right? It's there are a million metaphors, sharpening the axe, whatever it is. But yeah, so that's what you're doing. You're finding those moments and those things that bring you joy, that recharge you. Yeah, that's great. And so I cut you off. You're about to tell me professionally how you stay, motivated.
Yeah. So I just think about the people that I'm helping, right? So I have the one buyer now that I put together the pub crawl for. He's kind of on a time crunch all of a sudden. We had some time, and now he's coming up on the clock, right? And so I'm doubling down and looking in other places for potential homes for him, because I want him to get a home. That's what I'm so passionate about right now, because he's going to live here part time and then out of state the other part of the time. And so it's sharpening my skills so that I can find him the perfect place for him to have. Because he bought a car while he was here that he doesn't want to drive home, so he's got to get a garage.
Fair enough. Well, you get a garage over that car. So, last question: what advice do you have for people about finding their passion, leading in the workplace, sort of the big themes we've taken swings at today? What do you want to leave people with?
Be authentic. Mm-hmm. If you're not authentic, it's going to come across, right? So both in my past in pharmaceuticals and in my current profession, if I'm not the real me, people are going to see right through it immediately, right? So your personality is your superpower, honestly. So just be authentic and be yourself, and it'll help you lead to your passion.
Well, I couldn't think of a better first guest. I genuinely mean that. It's great to hear your journey. I appreciate you sharing. So thanks for being on. And this is the Walk On podcast. It's about people living with passion and purpose, providing a roadmap for your personal journey. Hear their stories, find your passion, walk on. Thanks for joining us. You were a tour manager this past year for another act. What is that like? Does that allow you to stretch and learn some new muscles and new muscle memory?
Absolutely. I mean, I've got this quote, like, you can't train experience. And I've done so much when it comes to music. It's like being a tour manager for a club tour doesn't really scare me that much. Well, I was hanging around and you noticed me looking at you. Well, I've been staring for hours thinking about exactly what to do to you. I can't believe you didn't notice the 1,000 times I walked by you. I must have looked like